Hello, geometry students, and welcome back to day 2 of rotations. Yesterday, we looked at the notation and the proper way to write notations, the proper way to look at the magnitude and whether it's positive or negative. And so today we're going to look and see if we can't kind of draw and create some rotations based upon that specific notation. So very quickly, if we are going clockwise to rotate, it's a negative magnitude. If we are going counterclockwise, it is a positive magnitude. That's the biggest thing to remember, is that the magnitude being positive or negative tells us which direction to physically move or rotate a specific shape. So if we look at example 1 here, I'm going to ask you a question inside of Edpuzzle. Which direction will this shape or this point? We're only going to do it with the point, but which direction should it go? Clockwise or counterclockwise? All right. So what this is telling us and asking us is to take point A, rotate it around the point X 90 degrees. That means because it's a positive, we are actually going to be going counterclockwise. We're moving it counterclockwise with a positive value. So in the image, and they have to give you the point that they want you to, the pre-image, and they have to give you the center point. So we need to take and move this point A 90 degrees this way somehow, right? 90 degrees. And so let me give you a few steps to maybe help us understand how we can certainly do that. So step number 1, connect the pre-image to the center of rotation. If I could spell. All right, so we want to connect that pre-image. In this case, we need to connect point A to the center. Let me do that right here. So I've created that segment. Okay. Again, the goal, and I'm going to maybe do it in just a different color, is to take point A and move it counterclockwise 90 degrees in this case. 90 degrees. So that was step 1. Step 2. Use the segment in step 1 to create an angle in the correct direction. Right? If I need to go 90 degrees counterclockwise, that means this is my base, and what I'm going to try and do, and again, because we don't have all of the tools at our disposal, we're going to try and draw something that's pretty close. Okay, so I'm just going to draw this line. How do I know that that angle measure is 90 degrees? Well, because we're using 90, we can use the 90 degree symbol like such. Or I could just say that this has to be 90 degrees. Okay, so that's step 2. We use that segment from step 1 to create an angle in the correct direction, and we're going to draw that other side. Now we get to step 3. And one of the things that we talked about being preserved was the distance. Draw the image, the new image, the same distance from the center point as the pre-image. Okay, there's a key in there. The same distance. That means this distance from A to X has to be the same as the distance over here wherever I decide to put A prime. So I'm just going to put a dot here and say that that is A prime. So the evidence that I use in this picture is twofold. I've showed that the distance from X to A prime, that segment, is the same as A to X. They're congruent. And I've also showed that the angle measure was 90 degrees, in this case, counterclockwise. And these are the same steps we're going to follow over and over when we're trying to create those rotations and drawing them by hand. While we don't have the tools, we have some evidence that we can definitely use. Okay, so let's take a look at another example. All right, we're going to rotate the pre-image point B negative 120 degrees around point X. So once again, they've got to give us some information. They give us the pre-image, point B, and they're giving us the center of rotation as X. Okay? If we try and think what it's asking us to do, negative 120 means to move it clockwise. Right? So that means I'm going to move clockwise in some sense this way, 120 degrees to the right. All right, so step one was to create a segment connecting our pre-image and our center point. All right, I have connected it. Step two is to draw the angle in the right direction, so 120 degrees. So if I were to do this, that would clearly not be 120 degrees. That's less than a 90-degree angle, so that would be an inaccurate picture. So I need to make sure that I go larger than 190. All the way this way would be 180. There's that straight angle we learned about. So I need to go somewhat, a little bit more than halfway, a little bit more than the 90 degrees. So maybe I'm going to draw it somewhere in that range. Okay, and remember, I'm just going to draw it pretty long for right now. All right, how do I know that that's 120? I have to make sure that I label it. Unless we had a compass or a protractor that we could physically measure, we're going to have to label that as our evidence. Now, how do I know where to put our final image, B prime? Typically, we would measure this. If this was an inch, I'm going to go an inch this way and put B prime. But for our argument, because we don't have all of the tools, we're going to show that this segment is the same as that segment. That I rotated point B 120 degrees clockwise, and that those two segments are the same measure. All right, so we're following those steps. Now, how do we do it, though, with an image? What happens if we're trying to take an image and rotate an image? In this case, I'm trying to rotate triangle ABC negative 75 degrees around point Q. So once again, negative 75 means clockwise. So this triangle has to go this way, 75 degrees. If you imagine, if you would imagine, I got another image just like this one. If I were to try and rotate that 75 degrees, look what happens to my shape. Okay? Roughly 75. Right? And if I were to overlay that and try and get those to match, there is where the new shape would be if I lined up the center points correctly. So I'm just going to leave this over here as a reference for us. What we can do is do that. Imagine if we were just to rotate point B 75 degrees. Right? Step one, create a segment. Still didn't do that right here. All right, there's that segment. Step two, create the angle 75 degrees. So again, I know that this one, I'm just going to put this on here for reference. That's about 90. So what I really need to do is go inside of that. Okay, so inside of that line that I just created. So maybe something like that. How do I know? Let's just put in there that it's 75 degrees. This looks to be about an inch again, so I'm going to go an inch up here. And there's where the point B prime would be located. I know that that is the same as that. Now I'm going to repeat the process for a second point. A second point. In this case, let's use C. I'm going to do this in green. Create a segment. create this segment, and it's going to be tricky on this computer program. All right, so there's my segment, and then I need to create from that segment something that's roughly 75 degrees. All right, so I'm going to label that over here, and say that was 75 degrees. And this looks to be about 2 inches, so I'll just give it 2 tick marks. So if I go 1 inch and 2 inches, C prime, where I move C, is going to be way out here, but I have to mark it with 2 tick marks to show that it would be the same distance. Now I've got B and C, B prime and C prime. So I'm going to connect those 2 points to show that's that side of the triangle right here. All right, so if I mark it 1, 2, 3, that's this triangle is the same as this one. 1, 2, and 3. Well, now we can use that information to help us find where A should be. How far apart are C and A? You know, they look to be like maybe 1.25 inches. Right, so I can draw a line coming here. I can draw a line coming out of B and show that that better be the right angle right there. So really what we're using, though, is that knowledge that I moved B first to get B prime, then I repeated the process that we've been doing to move C prime, moving 2 of them to get the rest. All right, and so really that's what we're going to be asking you to demonstrate on a drawing or a test. It's not going to be exact because we don't have all the tools, but you can still provide the evidence like we did on this diagram to show that measure was 120 and they're the same distance from the center. I just happened to do that a couple of times when I use it on a shape. That's all for today. Try the practice problems. See if you can't draw them by freehand. Grab something to use as a straight edge and do the best that you can. If you have any questions, please make sure that you reach out and get in touch with me. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Stay safe.